The night begins softly. The air moves as if it has forgotten how to hurry. Somewhere far away, a wave folds into itself, slow and steady. The sound reaches you like an echo that has traveled too far to disturb anything. It simply exists. Quiet, gentle, familiar. Close your eyes. Imagine a time before noise, before names, before cities learned to rise against the sky. The world was wide then, full of still water and slow clouds. People looked upward and found stories in the stars. They looked at the sea and saw faces in the foam. They gave meaning to thunder, to wind, to silence. Every sound carried a spirit, and every shadow held a god. Tonight, we drift into that world again. Not to believe, not to judge, but to listen. These are not tales of victory or punishment. They are murmurs of what it meant to be seen by something greater, to love, to fear, to be forgotten. Time has softened them, like pebbles rolled smooth by endless tides. What remains are shapes, outlines of longing and endurance that move gently in the dark. You might hear their names: Europa, Leda, Io, Semele. Once they were girls, queens, priestesses, lives caught in the gaze of a god who never stayed. The myths remember them as symbols, but before they were stories, they were simply people who looked at the sky and did not yet know it could look back. The gods of old Greece were not merciful. They were mirrors, reflections of human desire written on a larger scale. Zeus ruled above them all, restless as the wind he commanded. He carried lightning in his hand, yet he was never content with power. He wanted connection, adoration, something warm and fleeting. And so he descended again and again into the lives of mortals. But tonight, we will not tell his story. We will tell theirs and the quiet echoes left behind when the thunder faded, not with judgment, not with fury, only with the same patience the night gives to the sea. Imagine the first story as a ripple on calm water. A girl by the shore, her dress light as foam, bending to gather flowers. The sun lies low, the sea pretending to sleep. She does not know that somewhere beyond the horizon the sky has already noticed her. The wind carries her laughter, and for a moment the world listens. That is how myths begin. Not with thunder, but with stillness. The second story waits near a riverbank. A queen reaches toward a swan, its feathers damp with twilight. The air smells of rain, not danger. The moment feels tender, too tender to last. Somewhere above them, a storm holds its breath. The next begins in a temple where a priestess prays to remain untouched by chaos, and chaos answers anyway. Another unfolds in the forest, a huntress beneath moonlight, her trust taken and turned against her. And somewhere, in a room of bronze and silence, a woman sees gold fall like rain and realizes that even light can imprison. Each story carries the same quiet truth, that divinity and desire were never separate. The gods reached down, the mortals looked up, and in that meeting something beautiful and terrible was born. Not always love, but always memory. Tonight we walk beside those memories, not as witnesses to tragedy, but as travelers through time. The path is soft, covered in dust and moonlight. Every few steps the wind will bring a name, and then let it fade. You do not have to understand the myths. You only have to hear them. Let them move past you the way a wave moves over sand, touching, reshaping, and then gone. So breathe slowly. Let the world around you dim. The night is long, and the stories are older than fear. Somewhere between your heartbeat and the sea, the ancient voices are waiting. They will not demand anything from you, they only wish to be remembered. Tonight, we wander into the stillness of the old world. where wind does not ask and water does not answer. Everything simply drifts quietly, as it always has. The women of the sky. Europa, the girl, and the white bull. The morning arrives slowly, like the sea breathing against the sand. The air is soft and pale, carrying the scent of salt and sunlight. Europa walks by the shore, her hands brushing through wildflowers that bend under the breeze. The world feels young. The waves roll in without hurry, and the sound of distant gulls fades into the rhythm of her steps. Nothing in the sky warns her. The horizon lies still, as if even the gods are asleep. She is not thinking of destiny, only of the warmth of the sun on her skin, the cool touch of petals against her fingertips, the laughter of her companions somewhere behind her. Her life, until this morning, has been ordinary and light, a series of quiet days beside the sea. Then from the mist of salt and wind he appears, a bull, white as marble, yet alive, breathing. Its horns curve like the crescent moon, its eyes deep and calm as still water. It does not charge, does not frighten, it kneels. The motion is slow, deliberate, almost reverent. Europa tilts her head. The others retreat a few steps, unsure, but she does not feel fear. There is something strangely human in the way the animal looks at her, patient, almost kind. She reaches out, her fingers brushing the soft fur along its neck. The bull exhales and the air between them grows warm. For a moment, time pauses. The waves hush. The world seems to wait. Then she laughs, a small sound, uncertain but bright, and places her hand once more on the creature's head. The bull lowers itself further, inviting. Europa hesitates, then climbs upon its back. It rises with a strength so gentle she barely notices until the wind changes, one step, then another. The grass gives way to sand and the sand to foam. Her friends call out behind her, but the sea has already begun to pull them apart. The bull walks into the shallows, steady and sure, and the water deepens around its legs. Europa turns her head. The shore grows smaller. The laughter fades. The light reflects off the waves in silver shards that sting her eyes. She holds on to the bull's neck, her fingers sinking into its warmth. There is no struggle, only realization that the land she knew is slipping away. The sea stretches endlessly ahead. The bull moves faster now, gliding through the water as if it has always belonged there. The wind lifts her hair, and the air tastes of salt and distance. She feels both alive and lost, as though she is traveling not across the sea, but through the space between worlds. Hours pass, or maybe moments. The sound of water replaces thought. The sun climbs high and then begins to fall. When they reach land again, it is an island she does not know, green and quiet beneath the evening sky. The bull stops. Europa slides down, her legs unsteady, her breath thin. She turns, and where the creature stood, there is now a man. He shines faintly in the fading light. His eyes hold storms, his presence fills the air. But there is no thunder, no display of power, only stillness, as if the sea itself has taken human form. Europa steps back, the sand cool beneath her feet. The man smiles, not cruelly, not kindly, just inevitably. The world tilts, and the story changes forever. When morning comes again, the bull is gone, the god too. Only the island remains, quiet beneath a new sky. Europa walks its shores in silence, her hands empty, her gaze far. The sea that carried her here now whispers without answers. She will live here, build a life among strangers, and her name will travel farther than she ever could. They will call the land Europe, maps will carry it, empires will claim it, and her name will outlast her voice. But somewhere in the sound of the waves, there will always remain a trace of that morning. A soft breath, a bright laugh, and a single ripple fading into the endless blue. And if you listen long enough, you might still hear it. The sound of a wave that never truly returned to shore. Leda, the swan at dusk. Evening drifts softly over the river. The air is warm, brushed with the scent of water and fading flowers. Somewhere, a swan glides through reeds, its feathers heavy with twilight. The world feels quiet, half asleep. Leda walks in the garden beside the water. She is a queen, but the crown is far away now, forgotten for the moment. Her hands trail across the tall grass, her mind lost between thought and silence. The day is almost gone. The kind of hour when everything turns tender, when even shadows seem gentle. From the reeds, the swan stumbles out. Its wings hang low, trembling. Its white feathers gleam faintly against the dusk, touched by the last gold of the sun. It looks hurt, or perhaps simply exhausted. Leda steps closer without fear. She has known beauty in many forms, in silk, in song, in ceremony. But this creature's stillness moves her in another way. Not beauty as display, but beauty as surrender. The swan lowers its neck. She kneels, reaching out. Her fingers brush soft feathers and the world narrows to the rhythm of their breathing. The air holds still, as if it too waits for something to happen. Somewhere behind her, the palace walls fade. Only the river remains, whispering its old secret to the reeds. The bird's eyes meet hers. They are not the eyes of an animal. They hold a kind of quiet knowing, something she cannot name. Her heart shifts uneasily, but without fear. She draws the swan closer, cradling it the way one would a child or a dream. The wings fold around her, and then the night deepens. The river darkens to silver, the air grows warm and weightless, the stars blur above her. When she wakes, the garden is the same, but different. The swan is gone, her hair is wet with dew. The world hums faintly, as though it has kept a secret. Time moves on gently but unavoidably. Leda returns to her chamber. The moon glows through the window. She sleeps again, and in her sleep the future begins to stir. Weeks pass, the palace whispers. Dreams come and go like drifting petals. And then one morning, the attendants find her cradling 2 eggs, smooth and white as marble. The news spreads in silence, because no one dares to ask what it means. From those shells, 4 children will emerge, 2 mortal, 2 touched by something divine. The twins of earth and sky, the twins of beauty and violence. From them will come kings and warriors, love and ruin. Helen, whose face will launch 1,000 ships. Clytemnestra, who will one day raise a blade against her husband. Castor and Pollux, one destined for death, the other for eternity. But Leda does not know any of this yet. She sits by the window, the morning light soft on her hands. Outside, the swans glide again across the quiet river. People will tell the story many ways. Some say it was love, others say it was trickery or fate or something in between. But in truth, it was only a moment at dusk. A tired bird, a gentle queen, a night that forgot its own limits. And from the sleep of Leda, 2 empires began. Io, the girl who became a cow. Night settles like a veil of mist. The air is heavy but gentle. Somewhere in the distance, a temple stands half-hidden beneath the fog, its marble steps damp with dew. A soft bell echoes, faint, metallic, uncertain, as if carried by wind from far away. Inside the temple, Io kneels. Her hands rest upon cold stone, her breath steady, her prayer simple, to serve quietly, to be left in peace. She is a priestess of Hera, a keeper of silence and flame. Outside, the world moves as it always does. Slowly, endlessly. She doesn't know that the night has already shifted. Beyond the temple walls, the mist thickens, too thick for weather. It rolls like smoke, swallowing the moonlight, and from within it comes a pulse, faint, steady, divine. The sound of hooves echoes softly, then fades. The silence that follows is not empty. It waits. When Zeus descends, he does not come as a storm. He comes as the fog itself, the air turning warm and alive. The world holds its breath. No one sees, no one stops it. And when the mist finally lifts, the flame inside the temple flickers but does not die. Io is gone. In her place stands a white heifer, soft-eyed, trembling, sacred. She doesn't understand at first. The ground feels different beneath her feet. The air smells sharper, raw. When she tries to speak, only a low cry escapes her throat, a sound that doesn't belong to her. Her own voice has vanished, replaced by something hollow and strange. The silence she once kept by choice has now become her only language. The gods above whisper, and Hera sees. To hide what he has done, Zeus offers the cow as a gift. Hera smiles, but her eyes remain cold. She takes the gift, knowing. Io is bound again, not by walls this time, but by watchfulness. Hera sets Argus to guard her, a giant with 100 eyes, none ever closing all at once. Wherever Io moves, eyes follow. She grazes beneath the sky, slow and lonely, her bell ringing softly with each step. Days and nights blend into one long silence. One morning, the air changes, the eyes that watched her go still. A messenger, Hermes, has come, and Argus falls asleep for the last time. Io feels the wind lift, and for a moment, she runs. She runs through fields, across rivers, over mountains, but freedom does not bring peace. Hera's wrath returns, this time small and sharp. A single gadfly buzzing. The sting never stops. It bites her neck, her flank, her eyes. Io runs again, farther this time, across lands, through deserts, into seas. The world passes beneath her hooves like water. She crosses continents chased by the hum of pain, until the air changes and the Nile unfolds before her. There, at last, she rests. The river glows silver under the moon. The bell at her neck swings once more, a final note that fades into quiet. The gods watch, but say nothing. The night drifts on, slow and forgiving. In the reflection of the water, the cow's eyes glimmer, still sad, still human, still searching for the girl who once prayed for peace. Semele, the light, too bright to bear. The city sleeps beneath the soft hum of summer. Curtains breathe with the wind, and a lamp burns low in a small chamber where Semele lies awake. She is young, still caught between dreaming and believing, her thoughts drifting toward the voice that visits her each night, a voice that promises warmth, eternity, and something greater than love. He does not come as thunder, he comes as a man, gentle, human in shape, his words wrapped in gold. When he speaks, the world seems to still itself. His presence bends the air, the scent of rain follows him, even indoors. He calls her by name, as if he has known it forever. For many nights, she welcomes him. The city outside fades and the stars seem closer than they should be. He whispers that she is chosen, that her beauty rivals dawn, that no mortal has ever been seen so clearly, and she believes, because belief at that age feels like safety. But longing grows alongside love. What begins as wonder turns into a question too fragile to say aloud. She wants to see him, not the shadow, not the disguise, but the truth behind it. What does a god truly look like when he stops pretending to be human? The thought follows her into sleep and into morning. It waits, patient and bright. One afternoon, an old woman appears, her hair grey, her smile knowing. She listens to Semele's secret, nodding with sympathy, and plants a single seed of doubt. "If he truly loves you," she says softly, "why does he hide?" The words sound harmless, almost kind, but they take root. That night, when the god appears again, Semele holds his hand and asks, almost in a whisper, "Show me who you are." He hesitates. The air tightens, his smile falters. He begs her to choose something else, anything else, but she insists. The promise has been made, bound by divine law, and so reluctantly he keeps it. The room begins to change. The air glows, then burns. The shape of a man dissolves into something endless, light without shadow, heat without mercy. The walls bend, the curtains catch fire, and the air fills with sound too vast for ears to bear. In that brilliance, she sees him, the god behind the disguise, and in the same moment, her body yields to the flame. There is no scream, no curse, only silence, as if the world itself closes its eyes. When the light fades, the chamber is ash. But within that ash, something moves, a pulse, small and stubborn. The god bends down, grief heavy in his breath. From the remains, he gathers what is left of her, a spark, still alive. He places it within himself, into the hollow of his thigh, where life can wait. Months later, a child is born. Dionysus, the god of wine, of madness, of the trembling space between sorrow and joy. The sun she never got to hold, and the night returns to quiet. The city forgets her name, but her warmth remains, not in temples or prayers, but in the sweetness that rises from crushed grapes, in the laughter that trembles just before tears. Semele became light, too bright for the world to keep, yet bright enough to leave it changed. Callisto, the huntress who became a star. The forest breathes in slow rhythm, the air smells of pine and earth, of sunlight resting on leaves. Between the shadows a girl moves, silent, steady, her bow loose at her side. Callisto, one of Artemis's companions, sworn to live free among trees and moonlight. She laughs easily, runs lightly, and feels safer here than anywhere under the sky. The mornings are her favorite, when the mist still clings to the ground, when every branch hums quietly with life. She has no use for palaces, no interest in crowns. Her loyalty belongs to the hunt, to her sisters, and to the goddess she serves. In the forest, no one commands her. No one looks upon her as prey. Until one day, the light changes. From the edge of the grove, a figure steps forward, familiar, gentle, draped in silver. Artemis. Or so Callisto thinks, the same face, the same grace, the same voice that has guided her since childhood. Callisto lowers her bow and smiles in reverence. She kneels, unafraid, reaching out to greet her goddess. But the touch is wrong, too warm, too certain. And before she understands, the world has already shifted. The forest remains still, but something inside her breaks quietly, like a branch underfoot. What happened afterward is never told the same way twice. Some say she fought, others say she froze, but no story gives her back her choice. Weeks pass. The forest continues to breathe. Callisto walks more slowly now, her laughter fades. When the moon is high, she hides her face in her hands. And one morning, the truth becomes visible, life stirring where it should not. The sisters notice. The goddess returns, not in disguise this time, but in judgment. Artemis does not ask, she only looks. To her, an oath has been broken. To Callisto, it is a wound reopened. There are no words, no defense, only silence, long, cold, and final. The huntress is cast out from her own world. She wanders beyond the forest, her hair tangled, her heart too heavy for speech. The seasons turn. Alone, she gives birth to a son, Arcus. His cry fills the hills, the first sound of her new life. She raises him quietly, far from temples and prayers, teaching him the language of trees and rivers. But peace never lasts long in the stories of gods. Hera sees. And the punishment begins again. Callisto's limbs tremble, her voice breaks, her skin ripples into fur. In moments, the woman is gone. A bear stands where she once was, still with the same eyes, wide, human, frightened. She runs into the forest, the only home she knows, but even that no longer recognizes her. Years later, Arcus grows into a hunter. One morning, he sees a great bear in the clearing, unaware it is his mother. He raises his spear, the air freezes. Before the strike can fall, Zeus intervenes, not to repair, not to atone, but to preserve the scene. The mother and the son rise together, lifted beyond the forest, beyond wind and time, into the sky. There they remain. Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, the great bear and the little one, circling endlessly around the northern stars. No temple, no hymn, only motion. In every winter night, when the air turns sharp and clear, they are still there. A mother and child, forever moving, forever apart, glowing softly against the silence of the heavens. Deny the golden rain in the bronze chamber. The room is made of bronze, smooth, silent, and sealed from the world. No window, no door, only walls that catch the faintest glimmer of light. It was built to keep her safe, they said, but safety and solitude often sound the same when the echoes never end. Danae sits beneath the shimmer of her prison ceiling. Her father, a king who feared prophecy, has locked her here, believing the metal walls could guard him from fate. Outside, the world moves freely. Wind touching olive leaves, sea humming against distant shores. But in this place, even time seems to hesitate. She doesn't weep anymore. She has learned the rhythm of silence, the slow heartbeat of waiting. Sometimes she traces her fingers along the bronze, feeling its chill, wondering if the metal remembers the hands that forged it. Somewhere far above, the sun shifts, and the light changes, dimmer, softer, as if evening has entered without permission. Then one night, it happens. The air thickens, a faint warmth glows above her head, like sunlight trapped inside a dream. She looks up. Through the smallest crack in the bronze, something begins to fall. Not rain, not gold, but something in between. The droplets shimmer as they descend, soft and weightless, each one carrying its own light. They fall across her hair, her shoulders, her skin. The air hums. The bronze walls seem to breathe. The golden rain does not burn or blind. It feels like warmth made visible, like being seen by the sun itself. Outside, the sea keeps its rhythm. Inside, fate shifts quietly. Weeks pass. The light returns to ordinary daylight, but the air never fully cools again. Danae feels something alive within her. Not fear, not sorrow, but a quiet certainty. She doesn't tell anyone. There's no one to tell. Only the bronze walls to listen, and they, as always, keep their silence. When the child is born, the world does not shake. There is no thunder, no sign from the heavens. Only the sound of breathing, first hers, then his. A small, perfect sound in a hollow room. But the world outside remembers her father's fear. When he learns of the child, he sees not a son, but the prophecy that once haunted his sleep, a child destined to end him. So he acts, not as a father, not even as a man, but as fear itself made flesh. He orders the chamber opened, the bronze shatters. Danae blinks into daylight for the first time in years. Before she can understand what freedom feels like, she is taken. Her son in her arms, her body trembling, she is placed inside a wooden chest. Sealed again, carried not by guards now, but by waves. The sea takes them without question. It rocks them gently, endlessly. The salt air moves through the cracks of the box. Danae hums a lullaby she doesn't remember learning. The baby sleeps. The waves murmur back. Night turns to dawn, dawn to calm. The chest drifts, lighter than fate, slower than time. When it finally touches shore, the sun has already risen. The water glows gold again, almost like the night that began it all. Danae opens her eyes. The child stirs. And somewhere behind them, the long, dark night disappears, as if it had never been. Alcmene, the mother of strength. The night stretches longer than it should. Clouds drift slowly across the sky, and the moon lingers above the quiet roofs of Thebes. Inside a dimly lit room, a woman waits, patient, steady, her breath timed with the distant rhythm of cicadas. Her name is Alcmene. She has been waiting for years. Her husband, Amphitryon, has been gone to war, and she has guarded her home in his absence, tending the fire, the fields, and the silence. Each dawn she prayed not for victory, but for return. Each night she folded his cloak and placed it by the bed, as though he might walk through the door at any moment. One night he stands at the threshold, the same face, the same voice, the same scent of olive oil and iron. Alcmene's heart softens at once. She doesn't question the hour or the way the shadows move strangely around him. She only feels relief. He embraces her, his arms warm, his voice lower than she remembers. The night itself seems to lengthen, stretching into something timeless. But when morning comes, the light reveals something different. Not absence, not deception, just the quiet realization that gods often wear borrowed faces. Zeus has left, and the real Amphitryon returns the next day. Confusion trembles between them. Love does not undo what has already been done. Months pass. The city continues its rhythm. Markets open, temples fill, the sun rises and falls. Alcmene speaks little. She carries a new weight, a secret growing within her, quiet as a heartbeat. In due time, she gives birth to twins, one mortal, one not. Iphicles, son of Amphitryon. Heracles, son of Zeus. The world calls it a miracle. She calls it survival. Heracles grows quickly, his strength visible even before speech. The cradle creaks beneath him, the walls seem smaller when he breathes. One night, Hera sends 2 serpents to the nursery, their scales glinting in the lamplight. Alcmene hears the hiss before the cry. She rushes in and stops. The child is sitting up, the snakes limp in his hands, their coils slack and lifeless. The servants whisper of destiny, of signs from the heavens. Alcmen only gathers the boy in her arms. Her breath is shaking, her eyes wet. "Sleep," she murmurs, "just sleep." Years turn quietly. The legends begin to form, stories of strength, of madness, of labor and redemption. But in none of them is her name spoken loudly. The songs tell of the son who became a hero, not of the mother who stayed behind. Yet each dawn she still wakes before the sun, folds the same blankets, stirs the same fire, and waits for a knock that never comes. When bards speak of Heracles, they say his might came from Zeus, but perhaps it came from the quiet endurance of Alcmene. From the nights she kept the lamp burning, from the mornings she faced alone, from the strength it takes to raise a legend and still remain human, because even gods are born of women who stay. And when heroes dream, it is their mothers who smooth the sheets and keep the night from breaking. Wisdom born from pain. Metis, the voice inside the storm. The world was quiet after the War of the Titans. The sky, newly won, still smelled of smoke and lightning. Olympus stood fresh and bright like stone after rain. Zeus sat on his throne, young, victorious, restless. Around him the air shimmered with the faint hum of power, and beneath it all a whisper he could never quite silence. Fear. Because he knew what victory costs. He had watched his father, Cronus, devour his own children to escape the prophecy that one of them would overthrow him. And Zeus had done the same, in his own way. To rule the sky is to live with the echo of thunder behind your ribs. At his side stood Metis. She was not a conquest, not a muse. She was the goddess of wisdom, calm where he was chaos, clear where he was storm. When Zeus struggled to think, she spoke softly, and the winds seemed to pause to listen. It was said that her thoughts could bend fate itself, that she could see paths even the gods could not. In her presence, the king of gods was not louder, but quieter. Together they built the order of Olympus. Laws, oaths, balance. She was the mind behind the thunder, but even wisdom cannot escape prophecy. One day, the earth herself whispered a warning to Zeus. The child of Metis will surpass you. First a daughter, wise and powerful, then a son who will end your reign. The words fell like stones into water. Zeus smiled outwardly, but his chest tightened. Fear, the same kind his father once felt, began to stir. Power is a lonely thing. It trusts no one, not even wisdom. He called Metis to him one morning. She came without hesitation, her calm eyes reflecting clouds. He spoke to her gently, the way one speaks before a storm. "Change your form," he said, smiling. "Let me see what clever shapes you can take." She laughed softly and turned into mist, a playful challenge, as she had done before. But this time, the air darkened. The wind stilled. Zeus inhaled, slow and deliberate, and the mist disappeared. Metis was gone. He had swallowed her. Silence filled the halls of Olympus. The other gods did not speak of it. Perhaps they didn't know, or perhaps they did and chose to forget. But inside Zeus, Metis did not die. She remained, thinking, watching, whispering. Her mind became his, her voice guided his, and deep within him, something began to grow. It started as a pulse behind his temples, then a rhythm, the sound of a hammer against bronze. Day after day, the echo grew louder. He could not sleep. He pressed his hands to his head, feeling the beat of creation, the heartbeat of wisdom itself. The pain became unbearable, sharp as lightning. At last, he called for Hephaestus, the smith god, to bring his hammer. "Strike," he commanded, and Hephaestus obeyed. The blow split the air, one clean crack that echoed across heaven and earth. From the wound stepped Athena, fully grown, clad in armor of gold, no cry, no blood, no confusion, only stillness, the kind that follows revelation. Her eyes clear, her face calm, her presence both fierce and serene. Zeus staggered back, the pain gone, replaced by awe. The goddess looked at him, her father, her prison, her birthplace, and bowed slightly, neither in worship nor defiance, but in acknowledgement. Metis had not been destroyed, she had been reborn through her daughter. And though no one ever saw her again, her voice remained, in every quiet thought before a decision, in every act of restraint before anger. The rhythm inside Zeus's skull faded, but it never vanished completely. It became the steady heartbeat of Olympus, the pulse of wisdom hammering softly, eternally, beneath the noise of thunder. Athena, the city born from thought. The wind moves softly through the olive branches. Each leaf trembles, silver and green, whispering in the light. It's an old kind of sound, older than stone, older than the city that would soon rise here. The ground is dry, cracked in places, the color of sun and dust. Somewhere nearby, waves fold against the shore, breaking gently, as if the sea itself is waiting for something to begin. Long before marble or empire, this place was only earth and air. But the gods had turned their eyes toward it, seeing more than just land. They saw possibility, the start of a city that would belong not to the strongest, but to the wisest. And from that vision came two gods, each carrying a gift. Poseidon arrived first, his trident gleaming with salt and lightning. He struck the ground, and from the wound in the earth burst a spring, a surge of water, wild and endless. It roared with the promise of power, of conquest, of ships that would ride its waves to foreign lands. The people gasped. To them, it looked like life itself. Then came Athena. She stepped forward without thunder, without fanfare. Her armor shimmered faintly, not from vanity, but from function, the way a blade gleams when clean. She knelt beside the same earth Poseidon had struck and pressed her hand to the soil. From beneath her fingers, a single shoot began to rise. Thin, fragile, uncertain. A sprout that became a stem, then a branch, then a small, twisting tree. Its leaves caught the wind like tiny mirrors. Its roots gripped the ground as though remembering it. The gods watched in silence. The people watched too, their eyes moving from the roaring water to the quiet green. Poseidon's spring promised strength. Athena's tree promised patience. One dazzled with speed, the other endured. And then the decision came, not from Olympus, but from the mortals themselves. They looked at the sea, at its power and danger, at its endless hunger. Then they looked at the tree, at its shade, its fruit, its calm. And they chose Athena. The spring faded back into the earth. The olive tree stayed. That was how the city was named, Athens, not for war or wind or water, but for wisdom. Not for the roar of tides, but for the stillness of leaves. Athena became its guardian, its heartbeat, its quiet conscience. Years passed, and the city grew. Stone replaced soil, walls rose where once only grass had bent to the breeze. Yet even as columns reached toward the sky, the olive tree still stood, its branches widening, its roots deepening into the same ground where her hand once touched. Athena walked among her people, unseen but always near. She was not a goddess who demanded worship in fire or blood. Her offerings were ideas, balance, justice, design. She taught them to build not just walls, but order, to shape marble not only for temples, but for thought. Under her watch, the city learned how to think before it struck, how to speak before it ruled. There were wars, of course. Every civilization has them. The olive oil still burned in lamps while spears clashed beyond the gates. But even in battle, Athena's lessons remained: to fight with purpose, not fury, to rebuild what was broken, to question even victory. At the heart of Athens, the Parthenon would rise, its lines so perfect they would echo through centuries. Yet even within that vast temple, surrounded by marble and gold, Athena's truest symbol remained a simple tree. The same one that had grown from her hand. When the sun struck the Acropolis just right, the leaves shimmered like fire turned calm. Travelers who climbed the hill often stopped to rest in its shade, feeling something they could not name. Not reverence exactly, but understanding. In time, the city would change. Empires would come and go, languages would shift, the sea would reclaim old harbors, but the spirit of Athena would not fade. She lived not in temples, but in the spaces between, in the pause before argument, in the balance between courage and restraint, in the simple act of thinking clearly. It is said that at night, when the city quiets, the wind still carries the soft murmur of olive leaves. Some say it sounds like breathing. Others say it sounds like thought. If you walk there, if you stand where the first roots took hold, you might feel it too. That calm intelligence beneath the noise of life. The sense that every choice, no matter how small, ripples outward like a hand pressing into soil. Athens was not born from conquest or fire. It was born from a touch, from patience, from a goddess who believed that real strength is not in domination, but in design, not in the waves that crash, but in the tree that endures. And so the olive still grows, quietly, endlessly, under the same sun that once warmed her armor. The wind that moves through its branches has passed through centuries of voices, through poets and thinkers, through ruin and rebirth. But when it moves, it sounds the same. The tree remains where wisdom began, rooted in stillness, reaching for light. The Aegis and the memory of Medusa. In the quiet halls of Olympus, far above the noise of prayer and storm, rests a shield unlike any other. It does not gleam like the weapons of heroes. Its light is muted, deep, like moonlight against iron. When Athena lifts it, the air itself seems to pause. Not out of fear, but recognition. The shield is called the Aegis to most. It is a symbol of power, of divine protection, of terror that turns armies away. But to Athena, it is something else entirely, a memory, a silence that follows a cry too deep to fade. Because upon its surface lies the face of Medusa. Long ago, Medusa was not a monster. She was human, a priestess, quiet and devout, who served in Athena's temple. Her hair was dark as night, her eyes calm as still water. But beauty in the world of gods is both gift and danger. It draws light and shadow. Poseidon, lord of the sea, entered the temple one evening. The waves were restless that day, and so was he. The stories say what happened next, but the words always stumble. They say she was taken. They say he desired her. Yet all those words avoid the truth. The temple fell silent, and the silence was enough. When Athena found the girl, the marble floor still carried the mark of struggle. The goddess looked not at Poseidon, but at what was left behind. A broken vow, a frightened heart, a holiness undone. She felt fury, yes, but also something harder to name. Perhaps shame, perhaps grief, and perhaps in the language of gods those two are the same. So she changed Medusa. Not out of cruelty, but consequence. The soft hair turned to serpents. The gentle eyes became mirrors too sharp to meet. A mortal who had been powerless was now feared by all. Those who looked upon her turned to stone, not because she wished it, but because the world had forced her to become something untouchable. Years passed, heroes came. One, guided by Athena herself, severed the head of the Gorgon and carried it away. When the deed was done, Athena took the face, not as a trophy, but as a truth she could not unsee. She placed it upon her shield. Now, when she enters battle, the face of Medusa meets her enemies first. Its eyes do not rage, they only reflect. Those who see it tremble, not because of its horror, but because they sense their own, every cruelty they have ignored, every silence they have chosen. Athena never raises the aegis in pride. When she holds it before her, she does not gloat. She remembers. The shield is not a weapon, it is a warning, a reminder that wisdom without compassion becomes cruelty in another form. That justice without mercy can harden the heart like stone. Sometimes, when the wind moves through the temple, those who stand near her statue claim to hear a faint sound, like the hiss of snakes beneath breath, or the whisper of a woman long gone. Perhaps it is only the wind, or perhaps it is memory. For Athena, the aegis is not about conquest, it is about balance, to hold power and still remember pain, to see beauty and still acknowledge its cost, to guard without glory. The face upon the shield remains unchanged, but over the centuries its meaning softens. No longer a curse, but a mirror. Not rage, but remembrance. And when Athena lowers the shield at last, the silence that follows is not fear. It is respect for what was lost and for what she still carries quietly forever. Arachne, the weaver of silence. In a quiet room at the edge of a small town, a girl sat before her loom. The air was soft with dust and thread. Outside, the world moved without her. Voices from the market, hooves on cobblestones, the wind brushing through hanging linen. But inside, there was only rhythm. The pull of the shuttle, the gentle thump of the frame, the whisper of threads becoming something whole. Her name was Arachne. She wasn't divine, nor noble, just a girl with hands that knew how to listen to the fibers. When she wove, the world itself seemed to slow down to watch. Her cloth shimmered with color. Her patterns told stories so clear that people forgot they were made of thread. Birds, clouds, temples, faces, each strand placed with such care, it looked alive. Visitors came from distant towns to see her work. Some praised her, some envied her. But praise has a way of turning into challenge. Surely, they said, Athena herself must guide her hands. Arachne smiled softly. No, she said. My hands are my own. Up on Olympus, those words reached the goddess. Athena, goddess of wisdom and crafts, heard not insult, but defiance. Yet she understood pride. It was the twin of mastery. So she came down to the mortal world, disguised as an old woman, her cloak grey, and her steps slow. She entered the workshop quietly. Child, she said, your skill is great, but your heart should bow before the gods. Give thanks and your name will live in peace. Arachne looked up from her loom. Her eyes were clear, her tone calm. If the goddess wishes thanks, let her come and weave beside me. The air stilled. The old woman straightened, and the disguise fell away. Light filled the room, cool and steady. Athena stood, revealed, tall and serene, her eyes bright with intelligence that saw everything. "Then we shall weave," she said. Two looms, two women, two silences. Athena's tapestry shimmered with order, scenes of Olympus, the gods in harmony, beauty without flaw. Her threads glowed with gold, with sea blue and cloud white. Arachne's tapestry, though, told another story. Mortals betrayed, nymphs pursued, temples defiled. The gods, not as perfect beings, but as they were, powerful, careless, proud. When it was done, no thread was misplaced. Arachne's work was flawless. Too flawless. Athena stood still for a long time, looking at what the girl had made. Not anger, but sorrow moved behind her eyes. The truth woven there could not be denied. Yet in Olympus, truth spoken by mortal hands is dangerous. So the goddess reached out, gently, and touched Arachne's shoulder. "You have woven too well," she whispered, "and the world is not ready to see so clearly." Arachne felt the change before she understood it. Her fingers tingled, her arms grew light. Her skin shrank, her body folding into something smaller, thinner, weightless. The loom grew vast around her. Wooden beams like pillars, the threads now wide as paths. She reached out to touch them, and silk poured from her fingertips. Athena watched, not with cruelty, but with quiet mercy. "You will weave forever," she said softly, without judgment, without applause, only the rhythm you love. The goddess left. The room emptied, but the web remained, glistening in the quiet, delicate as breath. And somewhere in the rafters, a small spider began again, stringing her silver lines through the air, each thread placed with the same devotion as before. Since then, under every roof, behind every beam, there is always one small, patient creature weaving her story, endless, unseen, and free. Oedipus, the shadow of a prophecy. High on the slopes of Mount Cithaeron, where the wind sighs through thin grass and the sky never seems to end, a shepherd climbs alone. His hands are rough, his breath slow, his eyes following the faint trail that curls between stones and dust. Slung across his chest is a bundle, small, light, almost nothing. Yet inside it, the future of a kingdom stirs. The bundle moves once, a soft sound breaking the mountain's silence. The shepherd pauses. He unwraps the cloth, layer by layer, until a child's face appears, pale, new, unknowing. The baby's ankles are tied together with a leather cord. The flesh around it is red, swollen. A cruel mark, freshly made. He has seen cruelty before. But this feels different. The air around the child is heavy, as if the gods themselves are watching. Somewhere far below, in the marble halls of Thebes, a king has done what he thought necessary, abandoning his son to prevent a prophecy that said the boy would grow to kill him. The king believes he has escaped his fate. He does not know that every knot tied on this mountain is another stitch in destiny's web. The shepherd sighs and sits on a rock. The child's eyes flutter open, too new to see but already searching. He loosens the cord gently, the skin tearing slightly as it falls away. The name will come later, but it will remember this wound. Oedipus, the swollen-footed one. The wind moves around them. A crow calls once, distant. The shepherd looks toward the valley where another trail winds toward Corinth, a city of sunlight and order. He could leave the child here, as he was told, or he could give him a chance. He chooses the second. By evening, he has reached the foot of the mountain. A herdsman from Corinth waits there, older, kinder, and just as poor. They speak little. Words are unnecessary between men who live close to silence. The shepherd hands over the child, and in that quiet exchange, the course of history changes. The boy grows in Corinth beneath warm skies and calm seasons. He is loved, educated, and never told the truth. The scars on his ankles fade, though not completely. When he runs, he feels them tighten, a faint reminder of something unfinished. Sometimes, when the light hits the hills just right, he feels drawn to the mountains without knowing why. He dreams often of wind against stone, of footsteps echoing where no one walks. In those dreams he is both child and stranger, both lost and found. His adoptive parents, King Polybus and Queen Merope, call him their son, and he believes them. Yet, like the wind through reeds, doubt moves quietly behind the years. At feasts, guests praise his intelligence, his grace, his quick answers to riddles. He smiles, but he never feels fully at ease. Something in him listens to the silence after laughter, to the way people sometimes hesitate before speaking his name. One night, a man at the table, drunk and careless, mocks him. "You think yourself a prince?" he slurs. "You're no true son of Corinth." The words fall like pebbles into water, quiet at first, then spreading wide. That night, Oedipus cannot sleep. He looks out toward the dark horizon where the mountains whisper against the stars. The world he thought certain begins to tremble. In the morning, before the palace wakes, he gathers a cloak and walks away. No farewell, no plan, only the need to know. He will go to Delphi to ask the oracle for truth. He will not find comfort there. The answer will cut through him like lightning through fog. You will kill your father. You will marry your mother. But for now, on the road out of Corinth, the dawn is still kind, the hills glow soft and gold, and the young man walks toward the sound of his own footsteps, unaware that every step forward is a return to the mountain where his story began. The road from Corinth winds through low valleys and dry fields. The air hums with cicadas, thick and slow. Dust rises with every step Oedipus takes, clinging to his cloak, softening the sound of his sandals. The morning light is pale, the kind that turns even stone gentle. He has been walking for days. Sleep comes and goes, never deep, never kind. Each night he dreams of mountains, of shadows that seem to know his name. He tells himself this journey is for truth, that if he reaches Delphi, if he kneels before the oracle and listens, he will find peace. But deep down, he already knows peace and truth rarely live together. Still he walks because walking feels like control, and control, even when it is an illusion, is easier than fear. At noon, the road narrows. Hills fold inward, and the wind changes, cooler now, carrying the scent of cypress and dust. A cloud drifts across the sun, and the light dims just enough for him to notice a sound. Wheels on stone, the creak of wood, the snort of horses. From the bend ahead, a chariot appears, golden harness, red plumes, the kind that belongs to nobility. A man sits inside, older, proud, his beard streaked with grey. Two servants walk beside him, their eyes hard and quick. The path is small, too narrow for both traveller and king. Oedipus steps aside first, but the driver does not slow. The wheel clips his shoulder, sharp and sudden. Dust rises between them. "Watch where you walk," the old man calls, his voice edged with command. Oedipus steadies himself. "The road is wide enough for courtesy," he says, calm but firm. The servants glance at their master. The horses shift restlessly. The old man's gaze hardens. "You will make way for your betters." For a long moment nothing moves. The wind slips through the gap between them, carrying the faint hiss of leaves. Oedipus lowers his eyes, not in submission, but thought. Then he steps forward. Just one step, enough to say no. The driver lashes out with his whip. The crack cuts the air, grazing his face. Reflex, not rage, brings the next movement, a shove, a scuffle, the quick fall of feet on uneven ground. The servants rush in, shouting, the horses rear, the dust thickens, turning sunlight into smoke. When it clears, the chariot has overturned. One servant flees into the hills, the other lies still. And beside the wheel, the old man sprawls, silent, unmoving, his cloak darkening with soil. Oedipus stands for a long time, breathing slowly. The sound of the wind returns, and no thunder, no cry, only the low hum of the earth resettling. He wipes the dust from his hands, looks at the body once, then turns away. There is no triumph, no guilt. Just the strange quiet that follows something irreversible. The kind of quiet that lingers longer than it should. He walks on. Behind him, the road twists back toward Thebes, a city he has never seen but is already part of him. Ahead, Delphi waits among cliffs and mist. He will arrive there soon, believing he has escaped the fate he was warned about. Believing the world is still divided between accident and choice. The wind rises again, lifting the dust around his feet, covering the blood before it dries. The mountains fade into pale gold. And for a little while, the silence feels merciful. The kind that lets a man believe he has left the past behind, even when every step forward leads him closer to it. The road bends toward the east, where the hills break into cliffs and the sky begins to pale. Oedipus walks in silence. The blood on his hands has long since dried, but his mind carries it like dust that will not wash away. He reaches a plain where the air feels heavier, where the earth seems to listen. Ahead, dark walls rise from the rock. Thebes. The city stands quiet beneath its gates. Fields lie untended, smoke drifts from dying fires, and the people move like shadows. They do not look up when strangers pass. They are a city caught in a breath they cannot release. At the edge of the road, Oedipus hears whispers. A creature waits near the cliffs, half woman, half lion, her wings black with dust, and her gaze sharp as moonlight. The Sphinx. Her voice carries through the air, calm and cold. "Answer me, traveler, or be devoured," she says. "What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening?" He does not draw his blade, he does not step back, he simply listens, to the rhythm of her words, to the stillness that follows. His mind turns the riddle over like a stone in his hand, feeling its edges, its weight. Then softly, almost as if to himself, he says, "Man." As a child, he crawls. As an adult, he walks. In old age, he leans upon a staff. For a heartbeat, the wind holds still. Then the Sphinx trembles. The feathers along her wings loosen, drifting into the air like ash. She lets out a sound, not of fury, but of release, and leaps from the rock, vanishing into the valley below. The silence that follows is vast and clean. The gates of Thebes open. People pour into the streets, voices rising, hope returning after years of dread. Oedipus stands there quietly, the echo of his own answer still in his chest. They call him savior, hero, king. They place a crown upon his head and offer him the hand of the widowed queen. He bows once, weary, but calm. He believes the riddle is over. He does not yet know that it has only begun. Years passed, and the name of Oedipus became part of Thebes itself. The city bloomed under his rule, markets filled with noise again, children ran through the courtyards, and even the air, once heavy with fear, turned light and golden. The people called him wise, the man who had solved riddles, who turned misfortune into peace. Yet peace, like all things, has a quiet expiration. It ends not with thunder, but with the slow sound of coughing. One morning, smoke rose from the city's lower quarters, not from fire, but from funeral pyres. The smell of herbs and burning cloth spread through the air. People whispered of a sickness that came without warning, fever, breath fading, limbs stiff with pain. In days, hundreds fell. Livestock died in the fields and the wells grew still. The priests climbed the palace steps carrying olive branches and ash. Their voices trembled. "The city is dying," they said. "The gods demand an answer." Oedipus stood on the balcony overlooking the silent streets. He had faced monsters, storms, riddles that broke the minds of others. But this was different. No enemy to strike, no riddle to solve, only the slow collapse of everything he loved. He sent messengers to Delphi, begging the oracle for a sign, a reason, a cure. When they returned, their faces were pale. The answer was simple, cruel, and clear. The land is polluted. The murderer of King Laius lives within Thebes. Until he is found and cast out, the sickness will not end. Oedipus gripped the railing. Laius, the king who had ruled before him, the husband of Jocasta, the man whose throne he now held, he vowed before the city, "Whoever this man is, though he be my kin, I will find him. I will bring him to justice." And so began the search. He called the blind prophet Tiresias, the man whose eyes saw what others could not. The old seer arrived slowly, led by a boy, his staff tapping softly on the stone floor. The court waited in silence. "Tell me," said Oedipus, "who is the man the gods condemn?" Tiresias turned his face toward the sound of that voice, the voice of the king who did not yet know he was speaking to himself. "You do not wish to hear the truth," the prophet said quietly. "Speak it anyway," Oedipus demanded, "for the sake of my people." The old man sighed. "You are the killer you seek." The words fell like stones into a well, deep, slow, echoing. The hall stirred with murmurs. Oedipus's jaw tightened. "You speak in riddles again," he said. "I killed no one." "You are blind to truth, old man." Tiresias smiled faintly. "Blind? Yes, but I see you standing where your father once stood, sleeping where your mother sleeps." The air thinned. The queen, Jocasta, stepped forward, her hands trembling, but her voice soft. "Prophecies are wind," she said. "Once, Laius was told his own son would kill him, but that child was left to die. Ignore these riddles, my king." Her words tried to calm, but they only deepened the silence that followed. For in that silence, something began to move, a memory, faint and unfinished, a man on a chariot, dust, a strike, a fall. Oedipus dismissed the prophet, yet his mind would not rest. He began to question everyone, guards, travelers, servants, anyone who might recall the day King Laius died. Each answer brought him closer to the edge of something he could not yet name. Then an old shepherd was brought before him, a face from long ago, worn by years and guilt. And when the king asked where the child had gone, the man could no longer lie. He knelt and whispered, "The boy we left on the mountain, the one with the bound feet, was you." The words moved through the room like a slow wind through reeds. Oedipus did not speak. He did not move. Around him, the walls seemed to fade, the air to darken. The circle had closed. The sickness in the city had always been his own. The palace had turned to stone. Words no longer held shape, and silence became the only language left. When Oedipus understood, truly understood, the weight of the truth, it did not come with noise or fury. It arrived softly, like night replacing day, inevitable and calm. He stood in the doorway where Jocasta had vanished moments before. The air was still warm from her presence. The curtains moved slightly, touched by wind that had wandered too far. Her gown lay on the floor, pale against the dark. Then in the quiet, he saw her, hanging in the dim light, her head bowed as if asleep. He did not scream. He reached for her, touched her hand, then her face. The skin was already cooling, the body already a memory. For a long time he stayed there, kneeling beside her, the woman who had been everything, mother, queen, wife, and nothing could undo it. When he rose, he no longer looked at the world the same way. He took the golden pins from her dress, sharp and cold, and pressed them against his eyes. There was no cry, only the sound of breath. The darkness came not as punishment, but as mercy, a place where light could no longer accuse him. Outside, the people gathered. The air smelled of smoke and herbs, of sickness and fear. When Oedipus appeared, his face was covered, his steps slow and unsteady. A staff guided him, tapping softly against the stone. Behind him, servants whispered, guards lowered their eyes. The city had no king now, only a man who had seen too much. He did not call for pity. He did not beg for forgiveness. "No one has been punished," he said quietly, his voice almost lost in the wind. "Only one man has finally understood what he once could not." He asked to leave Thebes, to walk away from the city he had saved and doomed in the same breath. He did not want to see its gates again, nor its people. The same sun that once crowned him now burned too bright, and so he walked, blind, bent, but strangely steady. His daughter Antigone followed, a child with a voice too gentle for tragedy. She guided his steps, her small hand against his arm. Together they passed the walls, the fields, and the silence that stretched beyond both. The road ahead was neither exile nor redemption. It was only continuation, a slow return to the same dust from which his story had begun. Behind him, the city of Thebes breathed again. Ahead, the hills waited in stillness. Somewhere in that space between ruin and quiet, Oedipus found what truth had always meant, not knowledge, not victory, but the quiet acceptance of blindness and the peace that sometimes follows it. The twin children of the dawn. Leto, the mother, searching for ground. The earth refused her. The mountains turned their faces away. Wherever Leto went, the land hardened beneath her feet. She wandered beneath a sun that offered no mercy, carrying within her the weight of two unborn gods, twins who would one day divide the sky. No city opened its gates, no meadow welcomed her shadow. Hera's curse followed her like heat, invisible but endless. Even the sea kept its distance, its surface still and glass-like, as though afraid to reflect her suffering. She walked for days, barefoot, breath shallow, whispering to the children inside her belly. "Hold on," she murmured, "we will find a place." The world stayed silent except for the wind, soft, dry, and without comfort. Then, far on the horizon, she saw something move. Not a mountain, not a shore, but an island adrift, small and uncertain, floating like a leaf upon the sea. Its name was Delos. It had no roots, no riches, no temples, only stone and salt and the promise of stillness. When Leto reached its shore, she fell to her knees. The island trembled, sensing her plea, and for the first time in its drifting life, it chose to stop. It anchored itself to the seabed, as if saying, "You may rest here." Under the thin shade of an olive tree, Leto lay down. The air turned calm. The sea circled quietly. And there, after long days of pain and exile, the first child was born. Artemis, silent, watchful, her eyes reflecting moonlight before it even rose. Leto held her close, exhausted, and the newborn goddess, wise beyond breath, touched her mother's face as if to say, "I am here." Then came 9 more days of labor and storm, until the second cry broke the air, Apollo, bright and golden, his first sound echoing like music across the waves. The curse broke that day. Delos became sacred. The wandering island had found its purpose, the hunted mother had found her refuge. And when the sea grew calm again, 2 new lights entered the world. One to guard its silence, one to fill it with song. The moon and the sun, born together from a woman who had nowhere to stand, but found her ground in the heart of the sea. Python and Delphi, when light found its voice. The mountain was quiet again. Smoke drifted where the arrows had fallen, and the air still carried the echo of a hiss that no longer belonged to any living thing. Python lay still among the rocks, his dark coils loosening into the dust. The ground, once heavy with fear, began to breathe. Apollo stood at the mouth of the cave, his bow lowered. The light touched the stones and slid deeper, as if the sun itself wished to see what had been hidden for centuries. Inside, the air was cool, the scent of earth, laurel, and something newly freed. He stepped forward slowly, not as a conqueror, but as one returning something to silence. From deep within the cave came a sound, faint, trembling, almost human. A voice, not of a god nor of a beast, but of the earth itself finding speech again after long darkness. It was the first prophecy, the first whisper of what would become Delphi. It did not command, it did not threaten, it only offered reflection. Mortals would come to this place for centuries. Kings, wanderers, soldiers, and poets, climbing the same path through the mist, their footsteps cautious, their hearts heavy with questions. They would kneel before that quiet voice, not to seek power, but understanding. Apollo watched the dawn gather over the peaks. The light was pale, unhurried, soft against the scars of battle. He had not fought to rule, he had fought to make space for truth, the kind that does not shout, but hums beneath the breath of the world. Outside, the laurel leaves shimmered in the wind, the stones warmed beneath the sun. And as the god turned to leave, the cave behind him glowed faintly, a reminder that light, once invited, never truly leaves. From that day on, Delphi was no longer a place of shadow. It became a place of listening, a place where questions rose like smoke and answers came not as thunder, but as thought. And so began the age of voices, not to dominate, but to illuminate in the sacred calm that follows the fall of monsters. Artemis, the keeper of the forest. Night falls slowly, folding itself around the trees like a blanket of silver air. The forest breathes in rhythm, the soft rustle of leaves, the faint creak of branches, the whisper of small lives hidden beneath the ferns. And somewhere within that stillness walks Artemis. She moves without sound, her feet barely touch the earth. The moon follows her like a quiet companion, laying a thread of light along her path. The animals do not fear her, they pause, watch, then continue their quiet tasks, for they know this goddess, not through words, but through calm. Artemis does not seek temples or praise. She keeps to the shadows where the world forgets to hurry. When mortals sleep, she watches over what they leave behind. The forest, the rivers, the spaces that still belong to silence. In her presence, even the restless wind slows down, as if remembering something older than sound. Sometimes she stops beside a stream and lifts her hand. The water settles, the reflection clears, and for a moment the world seems perfectly still, as though time itself has fallen asleep. The silver bow on her back glints faintly, not as a threat, but as a promise, that peace, too, can be guarded. She does not chase or conquer, she protects. The wild belongs to her, but she asks nothing in return. When the moon climbs higher, its light gathers around her like breath, and the forest glows with quiet awareness, alive but at rest. Some say Artemis is cold, untouchable, a goddess of distance, but those who have walked through her woods know better. She is not absence, she is balance, the pause between two heartbeats, the space where no harm enters. When the world sleeps, she does not. She listens to the slow hum of trees, to the wings of owls, to the hush that cradles every living thing. And if you ever wake in the deep of night, when the air feels still and kind, perhaps it is her presence you feel, the keeper of the forest, standing quietly beneath the moon, making sure that even darkness remains gentle. The silence of time. The stories have quieted now. Their echoes drift somewhere between breath and memory. Voices of women turn to wind, of gods fading into stone, of light learning how to speak again. What remains is not sorrow, not triumph, only the still rhythm that follows when everything has been said. The sea moves without hurry. Its waves fold softly against the shore, like pages closing after a long tale. Above it, the sky stays wide and pale, the same sky that has watched every birth, every exile, every return. Time itself seems to rest and not ending, just breathing slower. No one truly wins. No one truly loses. What was fierce becomes distant. What was divine becomes quiet. The myths dissolve back into the elements that made them, into water that remembers, into earth that forgives, into air that carries the last trace of sound. The gods, the lovers, the wanderers, they have all become part of the same stillness. Even the voices of Apollo and Artemis, of Leto and Athena, fade into one long note that hums beneath the surface of the world. You can almost hear it if you listen, not with your ears, but with the calm between two breaths. Night deepens. The horizon disappears. Somewhere, a leaf turns over in the dark. Somewhere, the sea continues its patient conversation with the shore. Everything finds its place again. The light, the shadow, the silence that joins them. And if tonight you hear the faint sound of waves or leaves brushing against one another, or simply your own heartbeat echoing in the quiet, remember, it is all the same rhythm. The sound of stories that have already ended. The pulse of time that never truly stops, only softens until it feels like sleep.